All right, here with our MLB analyst, Steve Phillips. Steve, the Blue Jays season has come to an end. We're playing the blame game today, and we have a blame pie to divvy up. 4 pieces. You start us off. Which is your biggest blame piece?
Well, I think that has to be offense for me. I mean, this is an underachieving offense all season long. The stars, other than Bo Bichette, underachieved. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., George Springer. Springer had 2 30-plus at-bat streaks of not getting a hit. Struggling, not being able to make the adjustments to get out of it. Dalton Varsho, underachieved. Matt Chapman was great early in this season, but lost his stroke and never seemed to find it again. It just seemed like that the struggles existed all season long. The offense, a big part of the problem for this team.
Absolutely. For me, it gets 40% of my pie. You mentioned it. And this team is built on Springer into Bichette into Guerrero. 2/3 of that simply did not pull their weight this year. And if you really want to specify, we're talking clutch hitting, runners in scoring position. We saw it for 162 games, and then we saw it for 2 games in Minnesota. All right, your next biggest piece of the blame pie.
Well, that's 25% going to the manager and coaches. And for John Schneider, ultimately, the buck stops with him. He's responsible for the coaches. This is a team that didn't seem to make the adjustments during the course of the season. The base running was a problem all season long, and it burned them in Game 2 against the Minnesota Twins. And again, the offense just could not get going, and they couldn't make adjustments from game to game, within the game, or over the course of the season, both as a team and individuals. And there's some accountability on the hitting side of that as well. So 25% of the blame going to John Schneider and his staff.
All right, my pie is just a little bit smaller than that when it comes to John Schneider and his staff. 20% applies to John Schneider and his staff. You mentioned it, though, Steve. Their approach at the plate all year, it never was adjusted. That's on Schneider. That's on the hitting coach. Also, when John Schneider got here, a big part of his sales pitch, not only to the players, but to the fans and the media, was a different vibe around this team and a different approach, a professional approach, a playoff approach. And it never happened. It still has not happened. We'll see if he can change that in the future. But I'm 20% when it comes to Schneider and his staff. What is your next largest piece of the blame pie?
Well, I'm going to go to the front office. Obviously, Mark Shapiro, Ross Atkins, they understand they have the ultimate responsibility, but that's them taking responsibility for the blame part and what they're in on it. Listen, the Dalton Varsho trade did not work out as well as they would have liked. Lourdes Gurriel, Gabby Moreno, those guys have been key pieces for the Arizona Diamondbacks. They have to take some responsibility for it. And then ultimately, the lack of adjustments during the course of the season, and they went more defense and run prevention than they did run production, and it just wasn't quite enough. They have responsibility for that part as well. And I don't know who told John Schneider to take Jose Barrios out of the game, but I have to believe there was some part of the analytics department that played a role in that falls under the front office responsibilities as well. So they get 20% of my blame.
Yeah, that's why they're getting 30%. A lot of what you just said at the end there. I don't believe John Schneider has the power to make those massive decisions, including the idea of taking Barrios out and putting Kikuchi in. The way the staff was adjusted throughout the season, I believe that's on management. The lineup card day in, day out, I believe that's management in modern baseball. And leading up to the trade deadline, it was well known. This team needed power bats. This team needed adjustment when it came to slugging in particular. It was not addressed. They also hired a very young and raw manager for a team that was waiting to pounce, a team that they believed could win a World Series. That was their decision. For me, the front office gets 30%. All right, the final piece of the pie. You can name it for us, Steve, and how much of the percentage is it getting for you?
Yeah, this is leadership. This is what you see on the field. It's 20% of the blame for me. This is the level of maturity that a team plays with. And I use sort of the Atlanta Braves as an example. Ozzie Albies and Ronald Acuna Jr., 2 young stars. They have grown as players and as people and as leaders, and they grind out 162 games. They take the field every game. Then you look at Marcus Semien, Corey Seager. We looked at the Texas Rangers. Those guys don't make mistakes. They never give up at a bat. They never take a play off. And then the Jays, you look at it, the base running blunders, the throwing ball away on the double play from Bo Bichette. There's just so many little things that they don't do right. That's about leadership and accountability and taking responsibility for being the best that you can. This team's not quite there. 20% of the blame goes to the players not having that level of maturity.
Yep, it got 10% from me, a little bit lower simply because of veterans like Belt, like Kiermaier, like the starting rotation, which is chock full of veterans. Top 5 in the league in terms of average age at the plate, average age on the mound. That's what saved them a little bit, but you only go as far as your best players when it comes to leadership. Vladdy's got a lot to learn. Bo's got a lot to learn moving forward. There it is, the blame pie for the Blue Jays looking back on their season.
Well, third baseman Matt Chapman leads the list of pending unrestricted free agents. The 30-year-old hit .240 this season with 17 home runs and 54 RBI. Chapman went 1 for 7, grounding into a costly bases-loaded double play in their Game 2 loss on Wednesday. DH Brandon Belt hit .254 with 19 homers and 43 RBI this year, but he failed to reach base in the Wild Card Series. Center fielder Kevin Kiermaier provided the Jays' only RBI in the postseason. He finished 4th on the team in stolen bases with 14.